Yay.
There we go.
That's fine. I thought you did. Just remind
I'd like to
me.
welcome everyone. You'll notice that Mr. Pinto is not here. His term ended actually June 30th, and he'd been on the last 10 years and was not reappointed, and so I am vice chairman and acting chairman. We'll talk about it in a few minutes because we'll end up having a nominating committee. Jim was a very good chairman and a very good board member. I think we'll all miss him, and part of what I'm doing in this role is essentially trying to continue, I think, the positive momentum that we've had over the last years, and with a strong board. And so we also, and we'll go through as we do the roll call, we have 2 new appointees, and so we have Mr. Dennis Weaver, and we'll do the roll call, and then I'll let him say a little bit about himself. So just want everybody to know that a couple changes, but the momentum that I think we've been having, we want to continue, and to continue to build good things for the city of Portsmouth. So would you like to do the roll call?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Barron,
Here.
Ms. Cherry, Mr. Peterman,
Here.
Mr. Reineberg, Mr. Toops,
Here.
Mr. Wallace, Mr. Weaver.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. I'd like to take a minute to welcome Dennis Weaver. And Mr. Weaver, welcome to the Ports and Industrial Commission.
Thank you.
And would you like to take a minute to tell people your background?
Sure. I spent about the last 50 years in the maritime business. I spent 32 years in the Port of Virginia. Had the most recent 12 years. I was fortunate enough to get an assignment in Charleston, South Carolina, being responsible for the South Atlantic for our company for series terminals. And my wife and I have always had our home here in Portsmouth, and we're looking forward to coming back. I retired officially in January, and we're back here in Portsmouth, and hopefully to be able to benefit this organization.
All right. Welcome. And we also have Camille Cherry, who was appointed as of July 1st, and she could not make it today. But at the next meeting, we'll let her say a little bit. But she is a part of Crofton Industries and part of that family. So I think 2 people that'll add depth and hopefully continued intelligence in our committee. So can we have the minutes for May 28th, and each of y'all should have gotten a copy. And are there any changes or corrections to the minutes, or will someone make a motion to accept them?
I'll move to accept as they are presented.
Hey, second.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Toops,
Yes.
and Mr. Weaver.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And because we did not have a meeting last month, we have the financials for both May and June. So I ask that you take a minute and go through them for us.
Yeah, good morning. This morning, we're going to go over May and June financials. For the month of May, total cash and temporary investment were $1,044,403. Total account receivable was $361. Total current asset at May 31st were $1,044,764. Other asset at May 31st were $453,638. For total asset, $1,498,402. For the income statement, the only activity for the month of May was $89 for investment income. For the month of June, the total cash and temporary investment at June 30 were $1,046,252. Account receivable remained the same, and total current asset were $1,046,613. As asset was $443,638. Total assets at June 30 was $1,551. For liability and net position, we did book $60,000 grant payable. It's based on the agreement with the PER property signed back in October 2010, I believe. So total liability and net position at June 30 was $1,551.
That 60,000 is the new, and that's per the agreement that's been out there, but it's starting to
Since
show up.
2010, yes. And once we have a final, because we're not going to close the book until probably August 15. If we have any changes, we tend to move the liability. For the income statement, of course, the total operating expense increased by $60,000 due to the grants payable. And we also had other expenses for $15. And the net actually operating income was $1,864, for a net loss in the amount of $58,151. And I do have to point out for the pool cash, there's a typo. The last page for pool cash, and actually the ending pool cash should be stated June 30, 2019. And we will make correction for when we present the final audit statement. Again, this June numbers is unaudited. Once we complete audit, probably around end of August,
Just
we will
carry
present the final.
Thank you. Just carried the May numbers forward, and it just needs to get corrected. So,
You can send those to audit.
yeah, to audit. It says vote, do we vote?
You don't have to vote. But
Okay.
Normally you send those to audit.
All right, we file those for audit. All right, old business. Mr. Reinberg is not here.
Mr. Renenberg is not here, but I will update you just on the Union Bank and Trust transfer that has been completed. So the monies have been moved over from Town Bank to Atlantic Bank, I guess it's Atlantic Union, actually, not Union Bank and Trust anymore, but Atlantic Union. So that is where your money is now being held at this point, per your request and per the vote that was made several months ago. So that transfer has been completed. What we will need to do is, once we have a nominating committee and have the new chair, vice chair, and certainly the treasurer will stay the same, we will need to change the signature cards for the account.
And that will increase our income from the cash that we have significantly over what it was at Town Bank. So a positive move. Okay, the update on the preferred freezer development grant. We have a resolution in the package. Mr. Moore?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. There was a resolution in your package for the Preferred Freezer Opportunity Fund grant. This resolution, what we're asking is, there essentially needs to be 3 agreements that we will need to sign as the board. So, and this resolution will do, first will allow the chair, vice chair, or the secretary to be able to endorse these agreements. The agreements are as follows. You would look to have an agreement that, one, is between the state and PPIC, to state that the state will provide an incentive and you all are matching that incentive per the requirement for the Opportunity Fund, the Commonwealth Opportunity Fund. The second agreement would be a development agreement, essentially between the PPIC and Preferred Freezer, stating that you all say you will do this, And based off of that, we will provide this incentive of $180,000. And for our new members, the state, kind of backing up a little bit, the state granted from the Commonwealth Opportunity Fund a grant in the amount of $180,000. That's based off investment of $60 million and the creation of 60 new jobs. It's about $3,000 per job. The caveat to that type of incentive is that there has to be a local match. The PPIC stepped up to the plate and provided that match. Now, the difference is the state will provide the $180,000 up front. The PPIC has agreed to pay out the $180,000 over 3 years. Every time they create 20 new jobs, they will receive $60,000 over the next 3 years. Thus, we need a development agreement that states that very thing. We also need an agreement between the city and PPIC, because this agreement, or the incentive, what will happen is the state will release $180,000 to the locality. The locality then has to transfer that money to the PPIC, okay? And what happens is the state is fine once Preferred Freezer comes in and essentially commits at least $40 million and 20 jobs. The state is fine with releasing their $180,000. However, staff has recommended and PPIC has agreed that your $180,000 will only be released again over 3 years each time they create 20 new jobs. So that being said, let's say they do not create 20 jobs 1 year. Let's say they miss a year. They will not receive that money until they show probably the next year. If they made, let's say they did 20, they should do another 20. They missed that 20. Then what will happen is the next year, if they do 40, then they'll receive $120,000. But they will never receive the money until they can show that they've created the job. Because of all that intricacy, we need to have those 3 agreements. Again, one between the state and PPIC, another between PPIC and Preferred Freezer, and then another between a cooperation agreement between the city and PPIC. And I stand for any questions if you have any.
As long as you know what's going on, it's good.
Perfectly clear.
Yeah, and the resolution just allows the chair, vice chair, or the secretary to be able to endorse those agreements to keep this moving.
Just the chair or the vice chair.
Oh, just the chair, I'm sorry, just the chair, not too much responsibility. Just the chair and the vice chair, that's great. It's not my fault if it doesn't happen. Just chair and vice chair. So, and what we'll do is, you will vote, and then as we assign those individuals, staff will keep you abreast of where we are as those agreements come in. We have already sent back to the state after looking at, having our legal counsel look at it. We've already sent back what we feel is the development agreement between the state and what would be PPIC. So,
And just in summary, this is the Preferred Freezer is taking the old BASF site, and it's being redeveloped.
Portion of the BASF fund.
A portion of, yes. And they're investing $60 million in creating new jobs. And so it's taken a site that was extremely underutilized, and we were part of what brought this to fruition. And this is the mechanics of what it takes to get that done.
yes.
And so, are there any comments or questions on the resolution?
Well, it sounds like everything we agreed upon is happening, is the way it sounds. And before as we obligate money, you'll be updating the chair and the vice chair as to that you owe this, correct?
And the committee?
Yes, we will bring back regular updates because
Okay.
they have to bring to us, or they have to show the state first, and then that information that they give to the state is sent to us as well to indicate these are the jobs that are created. We will make sure that we stay on top of that because they have to be brand new jobs.
Right.
And they have to maintain those jobs to get the money. But we will give you regular updates. We anticipate it will be annually. We are still moving forward with a target date of June 2020 of being up and available. that may push back, maybe push back a little bit because of some other things. But we'll keep you abreast of that as well. Good things, all good things.
Okay, great.
But yes, we will keep you up to date on this.
Always nice when the governor comes in to make an announcement about development in Portsmouth. Yes. If there are not any questions or that, I ask that somebody make a motion.
So
Make a
moved.
motion.
Dennis, you can do it. I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Mr. Peterman?
Yes.
Mr. Chus?
Yes.
And Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And just to take 2 seconds, because it's a little confusing, there are 3 different balls that we have. The PER Properties is from 2010, and that is the site right there by the Jordan Bridge. And they have some tasks that they have to meet, and then we made up to a $300,000 over time, which is what you see the first $60,000 for. It's a little confusing in that this one for preferred happens to be the same numbers, and so I want to make sure, because it was confusing once before.
Right.
And then there is one other, which is for a firm that is looking to develop down the road from preferred freezer, that we're in discussions to see if we might be of assistance.
Yes.
If you look in the minutes, it's in there from last meeting. There's still some loose ends with that.
Yes.
So anyway, those are the 3 balls that I know. And the 4th ball is something Mr. Peterman has been helping to push, and we very much appreciate, which is the Southgate Annex. Would you like to give us an update?
Yes. A month ago, Doug Taylor, who's the guy running this for the shipyard and for the admiral over the regional commander, and I and 3 other PPIC members plus somebody from the Virginia Port Authority retoured the area, and they have 3 different options on the table right now, which none of them have been agreed to, but these are pre-decisional. Which one would be the entire property, from, including the wharf on the side all the way adjacent, and then the other ones are cutting pieces off and whatever. And of course, we owe them how are we paying for this? Not by money, but they can't take money or it goes into the U.S. Treasury. So they want services. And this whole thing is called an enhanced use lease. And it's going to be for a minimum of 50 years. And in this letter, that we're writing, nobody wants to invest in something that they might say, hey, next year we're going to take it back, and you spent millions of dollars to fix it, clean it up, and whatever. So right now this thing is kind of hung up in this $4.1 billion grant that the Congress has given the 4 shipyards to update their facilities and make them all the same. That's Hawaii, Bremerton, Kittery, Maine, and Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. So they're spending, trying to figure out how to. They call this the Norfolk Naval Shipyard Optimization Study, and then locally it's called the SIOP, or the Shipyard Internal Optimization Project. So there's 32 studies going on right now, 32, and 16 of them are in progress. Okay, so if you sound like this is a slow roll, it's going to take time for this to happen. Yes, and so so we owe them a letter as to kind of what we would like to offer them in exchange for this, and we're hoping we get the whole package, which is a little over 16 acres over there. Includes waterfront and a huge laydown area. And in this optimization study, St. Julian's Creek is included into it, and so most of the stuff that you saw that was in that big laydown area, they're looking to move that over to St. Julian's Creek, so that area will probably be available. What they're looking from us mostly, their number one problem is parking. And the 355 ship Navy that nobody has figured out how they're going to maintain yet. So they got a lot of things, and Doug basically was going to be here today to tell you this himself, show you a couple of maps of what the three areas look like and where he is, but he couldn't make it this morning. And he said he'll be glad to come to our next meeting to kind of tell us where it is. The shipyard commander is totally on board with, trying to give us as much as possible, option 3, if you saw those things. And we owe them the letter, which, Brian, do you want to talk about the letter a little bit?
We're working currently on the production of a letter of interest from PPIC to the Navy to really kind of commence the process for their seeking of soliciting inputs and trying to move forward with their process, which is quite complex. But in order to begin that, they do need a letter of interest from the city through PPIC. We've also been having conversations with our partners at the port. They will be doing the same. We are working together to identify potential end users for the property. So working in concert, we'll be providing that letter for the chair's signature once we have a chair appointed.
So hopefully next meeting we'll have Doug Taylor here, and he's briefing the Admiral, that we had in here that kicked this thing off, Admiral Rock. So we've got a lot of attention, but I don't see anything happening in the very near term, except they're thinking what they really want to do is, there are certain areas that they know they want to get rid of. That'll be phase 1. There's other areas that they probably want to get rid of, and that'll be phase 2. And phase 3 will be the ones that, people might, there's this code 300 over there that wants to keep their shit where it is. And so that may be phase 3, that you might get that in 15 years. You might get phase 1 in 1 year, and you might get phase 2 in 2 or 3 years. So they think that this phasing plan is the way to make progress, because you can't get anybody to agree to everything all at once. So does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, the challenge is that the most valuable is probably the phase 3.
No, absolutely not true. The most phase 3 is the laydown area that's kind of, that great big paved area that you saw. That's where just squatters have moved in.
Okay.
And getting the squatters relocated is something that is the challenge. And the second thing is identifying all the squatters. There are people there that left stuff there that nobody knows who they are.
Or how long. Yeah. And Mr. Moore and Mr. Donahue, with Ms. Basimas here, the mayor has been a part of this, and city council has, and so there is general city support for moving ahead with this.
Yeah.
We're just kind of assisting.
Yeah, I think, and I certainly don't want to speak for council, but I think the best step forward is to provide a letter of interest, as was stated, once we have a chair in place. You all may recall seeing or receiving emails from myself and Ms. Ogilvy about a joint meeting with council.
Yes.
I think, and we needed to reschedule that with new members coming on, the need for a chair. But I think that is a great topic to have for that joint meeting, mainly because when it all boils down to services, council will have to be the one that really puts the ball in the air, and more than likely the money's involved to make something like that happen. So what we would like to do is certainly get the chair in place, formalize the letter of interest, work with our partners at the port and the other partners involved, and then that may take just a moment. Certainly have Mr. Doug Taylor come in probably at the next meeting, and hopefully around September timeframe, have that joint meeting with council to have this discussion. And
Might even have him come to that
and
meeting.
have him come to that meeting. That actually may be a great topic for that, for him to come to the meeting and have that. So we'll try to schedule that around everything, but looking to maybe September again with Ms. White, the clerk, and see what we can get done. But I think those are the best steps going forward at this point.
Yeah, and just so so everybody realizes, the number one priority over there that their want is parking. And so one of the things we're probably going to end up doing is probably going to pave a lot and provide a shuttle service. at city expense, that runs during their rush hour every 15 minutes, 30 minutes during non-rush times, and every hour during the evening hours where people can get to their car and show up. And that's kind of what their number one ask is. And I don't think that's too unreasonable.
And I think it's also a good time to, I, myself, and several of city staff, if not members of council as well, participated in the joint land use study and review that's with ourselves in Chesapeake to really talk about some of these same sites,
exactly.
talk about some of these same issues. Is there some opportunity maybe on the backside of the shipyard when you start getting into Scott's Annex and all these other different places that you can do some things? Is there some property, some ways that we can get creative to make some things happen? So this is all coming at the right time. There's a lot of synergy in what we're talking about. And so, again, I think the right move from this point is for the next meeting, see if we can have Mr. Taylor come to the meeting. And by that time, we'll, again, hopefully have a chair in place, but at least a letter ready to go. Again, work with our partners to make sure we all show the interest that's necessary, talk to council, and we'll go from there.
Because they want to see continued interest too. I mean, and just keep the momentum going, and I know we all.
And I do say that we do have a letter ready, so we'll do it whenever is needed. It's already signed by Mr. Reinhardt. Just kind of states our support for it and kind of notes our history here with Portsmouth and how you guys are a big maritime community, our growth that we're having in the port, and how I think this program can really complement each other. I do also want, while we're sitting here, to introduce a colleague of mine who's sitting here as a guest. It's Mr. Kit Shope. If you would like to stand and kind of give your background, he's really crucial for the port with his knowledge with the military and how to speak that lingo. And as Commissioner Peterman knows, it is a different language. So if you'd like to stand and kind of introduce yourself really quickly, just so we know.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kit Shope. I'm the Port of Virginia's Vice President for Sustainability. So engineering, environmentalism, but what I bring to this conversation, or can help at least in the background, is I am a retired Navy officer and was a commanding officer of Naval Air Station Oceana. And what I will say is, having been in this naval installation command claimancy, Admiral Rock and the Navy Region Mid-Atlantic are more forward-thinking than anything I've ever seen before. Not only is the Naval Shipyard down here talking about in-kind or enhanced use leases, but Naval Air Station Oceana, Naval Support Activity Hampton Roads, Naval Station Norfolk. So the momentum is there, and for the City of Portsmouth and the PBIC to strike while the iron's hot, I think is brilliant. So I commend you for your proactiveness. So thank you, and I enjoy being here.
Are you going to be able to share the letter with
Sure.
Yeah, one of the things the letter is supposed to talk about is their experience in risk mitigation, which is something that I said, they're interested in, and we should certainly be interested in.
What we could do is maybe I could copy this, and we'll hold off on the sending of it so we could follow up with y'all's.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I could send it to you.
Yes.
Afterwards. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you want any changes, we'll.
Okay.
And again, I want to thank Mr. Peterman. He's kind of been instrumental, and kind of as an initial comment between you and the Admiral, and we've come a long way, and so we want to keep that momentum, and this is how we create opportunities. It's a wonderful thing. So next item on the agenda is with not having a chairman, we need a nominating committee, and that is to come up with how we want to move forward. And so Mr. Barham, you've been the chairman in that. You have lots of experience. Do you mind leading that?
No, I'll be glad to.
Okay. And essentially to come up with how we want to move forward. And that would present next month.
Yes, if you can get one more person on that.
Is there anyone who'd like to volunteer to be on that?
Well, Ed and I did it last time, and I didn't realize we screwed up.
Didn't screw up. If you'd like to do it again, Mr. Peterman, I would.
I'll be glad to help you.
Okay, that's fine. Why don't you and I caucus on this after the meeting and we'll
Okay.
come up with a time to talk.
Yeah, and then come back and we'll have that for next meeting.
Don't y'all need to go on a cruise to have your meeting?
You'd have more volunteers.
Yeah, right.
7 days.
Yeah, that's right. There needs to be some staff support there, right?
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Summit, we need a
Yeah,
summit.
summit.
Summit, yeah. Maybe on a mountain retreat.
Is Is there, and thank you for your help with that. Is there any reason that we need a closed?
No reason for a closed. No, sir.
Yes.
Just going to make a comment when you were talking about the PER property, Jim Salmons, just to update. Usually I give PPIC reports to the council, but in this case, I'd like to give PPIC a council action report. You all know that property has been under development since the 2008, I
Yes.
think.
Yes.
Was when Jim Salmon started, and with all the EPA cleanup, it's taken such a long time to get it going. And finally, just last month, in the last couple of months, there have been issues trying to get a certificate of occupancy for them to start their concrete manufacturing business there. And part of the use permit for the property that was issued many years ago included a zoning regulation that required either fencing or some sort of greenery as a,
Yes.
to keep it, to cordon it off from the industrial property around it. And when the EPA finished building the berm, the EPA said you can't put anything in the ground, be it a fence or a plant or a thumbtack. And so the city council did finally, it went through all the processes and finally approved a change to that use permit. And so they're all official now. I'm aware that they got their business license just yesterday, and they're all official. So,
Oh, fantastic.
patience has paid off.
Was there any further discussion on the using that facility for handling grain? I know that for a while that they had issues with zoning.
That's ongoing.
Yes, that's
We've cleared
ongoing.
the first hurdle.
Yeah, I think they wanted to get this point done, and I believe we kind of had that update when Mr. Crockett was here. They
Yeah, I
wanted
missed
to
that, sorry.
get that done. I apologize. They wanted to Mr. Crockett came in representing Mr. Salmons and PER, and he stated that once they cross this hurdle, then they can move forward with the granary aspect, which is why we brought up the $60,000, because we're hoping that at some point we're going to start paying that out, because it's on the books. It's been on the books for several years.
Right.
And so again, that's a $300,000 grant, $60,000 a year paid out over 5 years. So that's what you all approved. So we're hoping that this will be the start of that. That is something else we will keep you updated on, and we will continue to work with them to move forward on.
Just out of curiosity, what would be going? What kind of operation? I know it's grain was initially.
Now it's concrete.
Concrete right
Concrete
now.
initially.
Yeah. And
Oh,
then-
was it? Okay.
Yeah, and then the
It's an elevator.
granary was coming afterwards. And I
Gotcha.
think all this was done in anticipation of moving forward. But that was, again, good 9 years ago.
You're supposed to get
10 years ago.
the grain by barge, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
If
On
I'm
the ICW.
remembering, looking back at at what was approved, again, several years ago. So again, we're at a point now where Portsmouth it has a lot going on, and we've knocked down the right dominoes to make everything else move. So I think we're
And
there.
if you cross the Jordan Bridge and look down, you can see their site right
Yep.
there
Oh, I
and
know it
see
well.
what the activity is. I always have a casual interest when I'm going over just to see if anything's changed. So,
Are we going to talk about the water in West Norfolk there? Where does that stand?
So it's not on the agenda, but I will tell you that that project is still a matter of the numbers. In order for you all to make an informed decision, there's going to have to be some more concrete numbers. I think you all sort of approved some things, but they were based off of if this, then this. We are working with the group to come back with some concrete numbers that you all can work off of, make changes as necessary. But we really feel is in order to move forward, you all will need some hard numbers to make those decisions. And as soon as we can get those, we will bring those back to you.
and just in summary, we were asked to potentially be of assistance to enable an expansion of an existing business. The challenge has been there were some numbers presented. Those numbers then were potentially much larger. It also went from us participating to being asked that that money be given up front, and it created some questions in terms of we don't have a problem participating, which is what we said all along, but we want to know what the commitment is, and typically we would do it after, not at the beginning, and that's just to summarize. So I guess we're waiting for more concrete details.
Because this is about water, the size of the water mains in West Norfolk, and you may know all about
I
this.
read about it.
Okay.
Mr. Reinhardt, you did talk for a minute, but I want to make sure you have time for anything else that you have or to give us an update on.
Sure. While we're talking, and you said some of the PPIC funds, I just want to make sure that you all know that the Port is really looking into ensuring that we know all those funds that the state or the federal government looks at. This week we have, I think, a Brownfields conference in Norfolk. I'll be attending that to ensure that we are able. Perfect. I'll see you there
as well.
Yeah, and I think that'll be a great fund to be able to tap into to complement the Port Host Community Revitalization Fund, I believe is what it was just called. It's a long words, but having those two funds along with PPIC is another great tool that I think Portsmouth could use to get some more companies here. And then just to end it here is just today is the final celebration for the construction of the Virginia National Gateway Project expansion. The governor will be here today, so it's a pretty big day for the port. Hopefully the weather stays away from us, but it's going to be a fantastic event. I know some people that are sitting here at the table will be attending, and it'll be great to have you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Are there any other items from any of the committee members? Yeah.
No, sir.
Want to thank everyone and entertain a. Do I have to have a motion to adjourn?
You have the gavel, sir.
I have the gavel. Okay. We'll adjourn.
40 minutes, Jim for president.